What if the ancient Sumerians already knew the exact shape of our DNA? Not a metaphor, not a coincidence. A 5,000-year-old cylinder seal, carved before the wheel was even widespread, shows two intertwined serpents spiraling around a central rod, flanked by wings. Scientists called it a religious symbol for 4,000 years. Then Watson and Crick discovered the double helix in 1953, and someone put the images side by side. The room went silent. Here's what nobody tells you about ancient symbols. We've been taught they're primitive, superstitious. People trying to explain thunder with stories because they didn't have science yet. But what if some of them weren't explaining what they feared? What if some of them were documenting what they saw? Because when you lay ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, Greek, and Indian texts side by side, you start seeing the same image over and over again. Two serpents, twisted together, a central axis, wings or rays at the top. The Sumerians called it the rod of Enki. The Greeks called it the caduceus, staff of Hermes. The Hindus called it kundalini, twin serpents rising up the spine. The Egyptians, the Jed pillar, a spine, a central column of rising energy. All of them, thousands of miles apart, thousands of years apart, all drawing the same shape. Now let's get into what this shape actually is, because this is where it gets insane. The double helix of DNA wasn't visible to the human eye until electron microscopes in the 20th century. There is zero natural way a Sumerian priest should know what DNA looks like, unless the ancient world had a different kind of seeing. Here's the secret most historians won't touch. There's a practice that runs through every major ancient civilization. Different names, same core method: sensory deprivation, rhythmic breathing, extreme fasting, darkness rituals lasting days. The Egyptians called it sleeping in the temple, incubation. The Greeks did it in caves, called it katabasis, descent. The Hindus built entire sciences around it, samadhi. The Mayans used it in their dark chambers during initiations. What they were doing, and modern neuroscience is only now catching up to this, is forcing the brain into a state where DMT, your body's own psychedelic compound, floods your system naturally. And in that state, researchers like Dr. Rick Strassman found that people across cultures, across centuries, across continents report seeing the same things: geometric structures, spiraling lattices of light, beings made of energy, a sense of information being downloaded directly into them. Strassman's subjects in clinical trials described seeing, quote, a DNA-like coiling structure of light without prompting, without knowing the study's hypothesis. They were describing what Sumerian priests carved on cylinder seals 5,000 years ago. Same trip, different millennium. And here's the part that should shake you. If those ancient priests were genuinely seeing the structure of DNA during these states, else were they seeing that we've dismissed as mythology? The Hindus described the atom, called it Anu, as an indivisible particle of matter surrounded by spinning forces thousands of years before Rutherford's model. The Greeks described the nervous system as from a different instrument, an internal one. Now here's what no one talks about when this topic comes up, and this is the part I want you to actually sit with. There is a clay tablet from ancient Sumer, the Kesh temple hymn, that lists the knowledge given to humanity by the gods, and one of the items on that list is called the ME. The ME were described as tablets or divine laws, invisible forces that governed everything: music, kingship, writing, medicine, mathematics, sexuality, even grief and fear. They were considered me, programmable forces inserted into human consciousness. The Sumerians believed knowledge wasn't discovered, it was transmitted from an outside intelligence. Now here's the secret. The word me in Sumerian doesn't just mean tablet or law. It also means to be, existence itself. What the Sumerians were describing in their oldest texts is what modern information theorists call substrate-independent information. The idea that information isn't stored in matter. Information is the base layer. Matter emerges from it. That's not ancient superstition. That's closer to quantum field theory than anything Newton wrote. The ancient world didn't just observe the universe. They theorized it had a source code. And they believed certain humans, through specific practices, could read it. The spiral serpent wasn't a symbol of a snake. It was a symbol of the code. But wait, if ancient civilizations had this knowledge, why did it disappear? This is the part of history that gets deliberately blurred. There were 3 major burning events of ancient knowledge, 3 moments where what was accumulated for millennia got wiped. The Library of Alexandria, obviously, but that's the one they tell you about. Most people don't know about the destruction of the Nalanda University Library in India, which held 500,000 manuscripts and burned for 3 months, or the systematic burning of Mayan codices by Bishop Landa in 1562. He admitted to destroying thousands of books he called works of the devil, and then wrote the only surviving guide to reading Mayan script himself. They burned the map, then wrote the new one. So the question isn't whether this knowledge existed. The question is, who decided you shouldn't have it? I want you to do something right now. Google Sumerian rod of Enki and put it next to an image of a DNA double helix. Look at both images for 10 full seconds, and then ask yourself, is that a coincidence? Or is that a civilization trying to leave a message across time written in the one language that doesn't change? Because biology doesn't care what century you're in. DNA looked the same 5,000 years ago as it does today. If you encoded the truth about reality into a symbol, you'd pick the most permanent thing you could find. Comment below, do you think this was accidental or intentional? I read every single comment, and I promise you, the range of perspectives in this community is genuinely one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. Some of you have backgrounds in physics, some in archaeology. I've had conversations in the comments that changed the way I think about this stuff, so drop it below. Accidental or intentional, here's where we land. Every civilization that developed in isolation, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Hindus, the Mayans, built a system for accessing a non-ordinary state of consciousness. Every one of them produced knowledge that modern science is still catching up to, and every one of them left behind the same spiral symbol, pointing at the same molecular structure, carrying the same message. The code of life is visible if you know how to look. Now there's a follow-up to this I need to make, because the Sumerian ME tablets and their connection to what the Vedic tradition calls the Akashic records is a whole separate rabbit hole that I think is going to break your brain in the best possible way. If you want that, subscribe so you don't miss it. I don't post filler. When something is ready, it drops. And if this video hit different, share it with one person. Not blast it everywhere. Just one person you think is ready for it. Because some ideas spread best like that, person to person. The same way ancient knowledge did. I'll see you in the next one. And don't forget to drop your opinion.